Hey guys, what's up? RedMaster here, and welcome back to the video. Today, we are going to be looking into the ninja cards for Dwarves and Dinosaurs, just like the previous factions that I did for Warlocks, Pirates, Crusaders, and Vikings. We're going to be taking a look into the ninja cards for Dwarves and Dinosaurs. So, with that being said, we'll jump right into our first card. And that first card will be Energy Rush. Now, Energy Rush is a 1 gold rare card, ninja spell, of course, that gives your units +1 attack and -1 health. Now, to me, I like the concept of this card. You know, it's sort of like a low-costing, massive buff to possibly a lot of units. I'm tempted to actually try making something with this, like a Ninja Pirate Swarm deck, with Energy Rush as like the big surprise, you know, giving all your skeletons possibly +1 for a 3 attack unit, because 3 attack and 2 attack, you know, there's a difference between that, and I just think, you know, it has some potential. But again, this card overall is, in my opinion, underused. Of course, when pulled from a flux, it can be a bit of a I guess swerve is maybe the right term to use here, because your opponent won't see the Energy Rush coming. But again, I just think it's an underused card that hopefully might see more play in a maybe Ninja Swarm variant. And again, I'm going to be starting experimenting with this myself to see how good that could possibly be. But that's really all I have on Energy Rush. So with that being said, we'll move right into our next card. And that will be Replacement Technique. Replacement Technique is actually an old goodie for those of you who were around before Monsters Island came about. It was a legacy-ish card, in a sense. We had, maybe not the exact wording and maybe not the exact pricing, but there was a card, if not Replacement Technique, very similar. I'm maybe just blanking on the name, or maybe I'm pretty sure it was, but simply Replacement Technique. For 1 gold, you could choose a unit that has not acted this turn at all. So it has, you know, can't have moved, couldn't have done anything. Return it to your hands, so you get that unit back, and the next unit you play will take its place. A very interesting card that I'm surprised hasn't been used as much in ninjas. You know, there is the possibility for some like tricky little guy replaced into huge monster kind of thing with Replacement Technique. Although in this day and age, I could see why it's not being used, you know, in favor of all this sort of heal and all this stuff that's going around right now in the ladder. But you know, I've had an interesting experience with this card, and that experience has made me just really look into Replacement Technique and just say, damn, what a great card. Again, maybe you may not share this opinion of Replacement Technique because it hasn't been played much, but to me, I like this card. I wish it was, again, like Energy Rush, seen more in the ladder, but what we have in there right now sort of punishes plays like Replacement Technique, so I could see why it's not as used. But overall, great card and great ability, and maybe hope to see it blossom one day in the ladder. So, with that being said, we can move right into Camouflage. Now, Camouflage is a very intriguing card, but at that, a very gimmicky card. Well, obviously, it being in the ninjas is a bit of a downside. For 2 gold, you can give a dinosaur stealth. Now, this sounds good in theory. However, there isn't much of ninja dinosaurs going around. You know, with things like Magmasaur, Dino Nest, and, you know, the baby dinos in general, people have found ways to tech that into their own specific colors rather than just making a ninjas for the extra stealth effect. There are, like, ninja dinos out there that play maybe 2 or maybe even 3, to be really risky, copies of Camouflage. But again, it's a very silly concept, Camouflage. You're either using it to avoid spell damage to, you know, maybe protect a Magmasaur or something, or using it to at least hide a dinosaur to keep it alive for either Dino Nest or an evolution play. So really, there's not much of an offensive advantage that you can get with Camouflage. It's all more of a defensive, in my opinion. Again, usually playing this thing mostly to you know, save a dinosaur to build them up as a stronger force later. If you are going to play offensive with Camouflage, I could see maybe you run a Magmasaur up to castle or really close to face, and then just blast maybe if they're not expecting it. Maybe, you know, target a hidden clump of units. Again, that's me though, not exactly, you know, a player of Camouflage. But those are the only two ways, like I mentioned, I could see camouflage being used within dinosaurs, especially ninja dinosaurs at that nowadays. So yeah, with that being said, we can move right into the next card. Epic Team Up. Now, Epic Team Up is a card, again, not really played, but unlike the other first two cards, this card doesn't really seem all too strong in comparison. For 2 gold, you can give 1 attack to a combat unit and another to a random ally. So essentially, you're giving 2 different units plus 1 attack. Compared to Energy Rush, this is not strong at all. Seeing as how with Energy Rush you can give every unit plus 1 attack rather than only 2. But again, this card I wouldn't throw into a deck because there are much better options in terms of a power-up that you can get. Like in neutrals, there are some great power-up spells. And maybe I want to throw in maybe some Gold Gain or Shrapnel Grenade in Pirates. You see where I'm getting at here. If you can pull it from Flux, it's an okay pull, but that's really all I could see. Well, and then there's all the other spell kind of cards like Smuggling Ring, Santa, Dragon Sword. Kind of, in my opinion, just saying all those things kind of makes me think of this being a filler card for that kind of random effects. With the cards like I just mentioned, you pull Epic Team Up, and that's not a bad pull. That's all right compared to some of the other things you can get. But yeah, other than that, it just doesn't seem too strong in my opinion. So, yeah, I think this is a point where we could probably jump into our next card because there's not much else to say about Epic Team Up. So, the next card will be Forbidden Scroll. Forbidden Scroll for 2 gold, you can give a combat unit +2/+2, and then discard a card at random. Pretty interesting to see this kind of card, especially for ninjas. It's a pretty decent power up for 2 gold. But the discard is something that is like the penalty you pay for using this card. Now, the discard effect doesn't bother me too much. We've seen with cards like Forbidden City, where you're drawing 3 and then discarding a card. It's sort of like a similar, like they're based off of similar principles with this. It's a decent to pretty good ability, but you're gonna have to pay a card for it, and that's kind of fair, possibly. If you're running like possibly Crusader Ninja, I think you could run a pretty strong discard deck. I've actually seen the discard deck made by another player, and it's not that bad. It uses Forbidden Scroll well, and pairing it up with Forbidden City, you can afford to waste that card. Possibly, this is just things that I'm spitballing and things I imagine are involved in that discard deck that I have seen. So, not bad for the stats either. For the price you're getting, for the price you're paying, it's not a bad power up. So, yeah. With that being said, we can move right into our next card. Kunai. Now, Kunai again is an oldie that has made its way back onto the scene. However, not that strong as it once was. For 2 gold, you're dealing 1 damage to a combat unit, and then it rebounds into your hand, so you're dealing 1 damage to a different combat unit. Not that strong and not that good whatsoever. Compared to the other rebound spells and the other spells that can fit into the 2 gold slot, this is something that you probably do not want to run. Sure, you're getting the rebound effect for later, so, you could always be like, oh, now is the perfect time to use 1 damage. But really, it's 1 damage. That's essentially like playing a more expensive flame in the deck. So, it's not that appealing to me, and it's not that strong. Especially with things, again, in other gold slot, not other gold slots, the same gold slot, that can do more damage than Kunai. It just doesn't seem all that strong to me. And the rebound is just not that, it's not worth it, especially for the damage you're getting for this card. So, yeah. With that being said, we can move into our next card. Lunging Attack. Now, Lunging Attack is one of the more popular cards to come out of the expansion for ninjas. For 2 gold, you can give a unit +1 movement and +1/1 stats for this turn. Extremely useful with the new spawn system and the way that positioning has been affected nowadays. You can really give, can deliver quite a damaging blow to your opponent if used correctly. With Swordsman, Lunging Attack is pretty powerful, again, combined with Swordsman. And, cards just that you know, maybe you need an extra reach for, lunging attack will do. I've used this card personally and find it very useful in situations, and I've seen it used many other times to an effect where the opponent is definitely, you know, drawn back from it and has to take an extra turn to recuperate because they probably lost something that they didn't expect to with lunging attack. So again, definitely a great solid card to come out of this, and just you could definitely see why it's a pretty powerful card. So we can move right into our next card then, which is Nimble Retreat. Now, Nimble Retreat is another one of those cards that has been used since the expansion, but not to not to an extent like lunging attack, where it's, you know, included in most ninja decks. Nimble Retreat for 2 gold. You can give all your units +3 movement this turn, but they cannot attack. Very devastating with aura combos like Furnace Knight and Primordial Flame. Nimble Retreat is probably one of the cards that you can use for a probably purple-red Aura Rush deck. I've had it used on me, and, you know, with Nimble Retreat, you just don't see it coming. You can have, you know, alright, I can probably block Primordial Flame and Furnace Knight while they're over there, but suddenly they come lunging at you, and all of a sudden it's a whole new ball game. Now, since this heal meta has emerged, Nimble Retreat has been a card that's being used less and less. However, it's not a card that is faded from existence, as people are still trying to run it with aura units, most especially. Or units like Vicious Sunflower, which can detonate right there. And with cards like Darkfire that don't necessarily need the unit to have attacked, you know, you can just sacrifice it and boom, it's 5 damage. Definitely some devastating combinations with Nimble Retreat. So, but again, not as prevalent. Had to think of the word for a second there, because of what is currently being run at a top tier level. So, we can actually move into our next card, which will be Dissipate. Now, Dissipate is another one of those cards that have been highly used since coming out. For 3 gold, it's a focus spell that returns an enemy to its owner's hand, and it costs 2 more. So this is sort of like a focus knockout, if you will. The cost increase definitely is a hinder or an annoyance, if that's probably a better term to use here, on your opponent, since you know, they throw something out and then poof, it's gone. Even worse if it's being buffed, with some cards like Blinding Radiance sneaking into decks, you know, to power up their units so they can Holy Aura the castle. Dissipate can definitely be a very strict canceller of that, you know, just poof and it loses the aura effect, you don't get it back. So that's something to consider when, you know, facing off against ninjas. You can never know when the Dissipate is coming to just poof, there goes a enemy unit now, and now you have to wait maybe an additional turn or 2 before reusing it. So definitely, again, probably if not close to the most common card being used from the ninjas out of this expansion. So that just goes to say a lot about this card and its power overall. So not much else to say more on Dissipate, so we can move right into. So the next card we move on to is Infiltrate. Now, Infiltrate is a 3 gold costing card, whereas your opponent discards a card at random. Very nice in terms of what it can do. It could definitely screw around with your opponent a bit, but 3 gold is not worth the cost for me to include it into a deck. Maybe if it was 2 cost, I might throw in like maybe 1 copy if I actually needed a slot. But again, this is like a very sort of silly card in my opinion. You know, you won't purposely waste the gold just to mess around with your opponent, unless he had like maybe 1 or 2 cards in your hand. Then maybe just discarding 1 could potentially mess him up and cost him the game. But again, you know, very silly, very sort of I guess gimmicky. Could be a good word in my opinion to describe this. Despite that the discard is a fairly new sort of an actually reborn ability, it just doesn't seem worth it for 3 gold to just discard the card, whereas I could be doing so much more. But that's just my opinion on this card. Definitely like the discarding feature of this, you know, force your opponent to discard a card rather than yourself, so that's always nice to see. So with that being said, I guess we can move into the next card. the Stone Dragon statue. Now, this is the only card to come out as a support to dragons from Dwarves and Dinosaurs. For 3 gold, you can add a Stone Drake to your hand, and it costs 2 less. So basically, it's a 4 gold costing Stone Drake instantly to your hand. Can't say I'm impressed with this card whatsoever. It does bring ninjas into the dragon picture a bit, yes, but to what extent? The ninjas were already working with Wotan, sort of the lowest tier dragon, if you will, but adding this doesn't make them that much better either. You're essentially just adding 1 Drake to your hand, comparing it to actually dragon taming, where you could add 2 for 2 gold. It doesn't seem worth it to add 1 for a reduced price. But that's kind of like just my little opinion here. Just I don't think it's just worth it to add this kind of card to your hand only for 3 gold when ninjas isn't even a big faction you played alongside dragons in general. That's kind of what I'm trying to draw a line at here. So yeah, with that being said, we can move on to our final card of the video, which will be Ghost Strike. Now, Ghost Strike for 5 gold, you can deal 2 damage to a combat unit, then deal 3 damage to a random enemy. The damage output is nice, especially for when you're looking at 2 damage and then plus 3, so a total of 5 damage to be dealt. However, the two differentiating targets is where some people might look at this and go, "Do I really want this in my deck?" Sure, it does about as much as Minotaur Strike. Actually, pretty common in damage. Unless you add a Minotaur to the Minotaur Strike, and then that gets a little. However, it's just Ghost Strike doesn't seem too powerful to me. You're wasting 5 gold, so that's pretty much possibly wasting a turn just to deal 2 damage and then 3. So you're hoping to get rid of something. It just doesn't seem to work nicely to me, to be honest. It just doesn't seem too powerful, especially with there being, again, we're going back to the whole better removal options for a much cheaper costing. And even looking at Eternity Strike, Eternity Strike could be better because you're dealing 3 damage to possibly multiple enemies. So, overall, Ghost Strike doesn't seem too much of a powerful card. So, yeah. With that being said, guys, that's going to conclude it for the ninja cards for Dwarves and Dinosaurs. If you like this video, please make sure to slap a like button. Not a like button. Slap a thumbs up, a like on this video. Share with your friends and comment down below what your thoughts overall on the ninja cards for Dwarves and Dinosaurs are. Remember to use code RedMaster to get 5 free packs if you haven't done so already. And if you are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. We only have 1 more faction to go, actually, which will be the neutral faction, which will be covered later on this week. So make sure you tune in for that. So with that being said, guys, until next time, stay gaming.